Now, you guys already know I'm not a big believer in the Atlanta Falcons going into this season. I don't really think they're good enough to be a playoff team. But for this segment, I'm going to put my opinions and beliefs when it comes to how I view the Falcons aside. And I'm going to explain to you guys how the Atlanta Falcons can make it to the playoffs. So if the Atlanta Falcons make it to the postseason, I believe that they need all of these things to happen. The first thing is they need to take care of business at home. They don't play too many good teams at home in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium this year. The best teams that they play are the Washington Commanders and the Minnesota Vikings. And if you exclude the NFC South opponents that they played the Packers, Texans, and Colts at home. They should be able to win 3 of those games. The Texans and Colts, they're in a little bit of a rebuild. When you look at the Houston Texans, yeah, they're going to be better than what people expect them to be, but still, they're going to have a lot of ups and downs because for the most part, their team is fairly young and they have a new head coach. You got the Indianapolis Colts who are going to be fun to watch with Anthony Richardson at the helm at QB, but with Anthony Richardson being the starter, you know that he's going to have some highs and he's going to have some lows, so there's going to be a lot of inconsistencies in his performance. So they should be able to beat the Texans and the Colts. And for the Green Bay Packers, you don't really know what the hell you're going to get out of Jordan Love this year. They're probably one of the biggest wild cards going into this season. So the Atlanta Falcons, their home schedule isn't all that difficult. Their best 2 teams are going to be the Minnesota Vikings and the Washington Commanders, who they're going to have to host. The next thing that Atlanta needs to be able to do is they need solid to above average or slightly above average quarterback play out of Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder doesn't need to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for the Atlanta Falcons to make it to the postseason. You want to know why? Because first of all, this division doesn't really have too many good or proven QBs. The best QB in this division at the moment is Derek Carr. And Derek Carr, at best, is a top 12, top 13 QB, and he needs a good team around him for him to be successful. And I have reservations about this New Orleans coaching staff. Like, I thought that New Orleans coaching staff was going to be really good, despite Sean Payton retiring, because they retained most of the guys who were under Sean Payton for all those years he was in New Orleans. And yet, Pete Carmichael, the Saints offensive coordinator, act like he forgot how to call plays and how to manage the offense last season. So I have a lot of reservations about New Orleans this year. Can you say they have a more talented team than the Falcons going into this season on offense? Yes, they do, but coaching matters. And I trust Arthur Smith way more than I trust New Orleans going into this season. So I don't know if Derek Carr is going to be good enough to get New Orleans into the playoffs, despite the fact that many people believe that he has a way better team around him than what he ever had with Las Vegas. We're going to see. But for Desmond Ridder, you don't really need this dude to be a top-level QB for the Falcons to make it to the postseason. All they need this dude to do is to take care of the football, don't turn it over, be able to extend plays at times, and get the ball to Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London. That shouldn't be too hard to do. And the dude wasn't completely terrible last season. All right, he was pretty okay at times. He should be able to improve going into year 2 under Arthur Smith's system. So for Desmond Ridder, as long as this guy can give you average to above average QB play, you should be able to make it to the postseason. With the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their quarterback situation looks god-awful right now. Have you not seen their OTA so far? Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask can't even hit accurate receivers when they're running routes on the air with no DBs and no defense. Do you really trust them? I don't. Shit, I'll put more trust in Desmond Ridder than I would Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask down there in Tampa. And Bryce Young, you guys know I love me some Bryce Young. He's still a rookie. The jury's still out on him. But for Desmond Ridder, this division with the quarterbacks that currently are in it right now, they're not any of the best in the NFL. It's not like you're in the AFC West and you're going against Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes. You're going against Derek Carr, Bryce Young, or either Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. So for Desmond Ridder, you don't really need to play at an elite level to get Atlanta into the playoffs. And plus, you got to remember that Arthur Smith, his offensive philosophy is run the damn football. You got Bijan Robinson. You drafted this guy in the top 10. You better feed him. You better give this guy hella touches. And not just because you spent the high draft pick on him, but also because he's on 2 of my fantasy football squads. And I need all those damn fantasy points, people. All those damn fantasy points. So, Desmond Ridder, get the ball to Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Don't turn it over, and you should be okay. And it shouldn't be that difficult to do that. Kyle Pitts is one of the best tight ends in the NFL. Now, I want to say he's as good as George Kittle or Travis Kelce right now, but I probably would already consider Kyle Pitts to be a top 5 tight end in the game right now. Shouldn't be too hard to give that guy the football. Drake London had a really good rookie season, a better rookie season than what a lot of people give him credit for. He was held back by the QB play. So Desmond Ridder can give you solid, serviceable QB play. That should be good enough to get you to the postseason in this division with how the quarterback situation is in the NFC South. Now, the next thing that the Atlanta Falcons need in order for them to make it to the playoffs this year is that this pass defense really needs to improve under this new defensive coordinator and Ryan Nielsen. They need to be able to slow down guys like Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, with Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, Kevin O'Connell with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. A lot of people are doubting the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers, but with the talent that they have on that squad, they're going to be a serious threat in the AFC this year, and that offense is going to be really hard to stop. Y'all sleep on Aaron Rodgers all y'all want to, and watch him wake y'all up. This Falcons defense is going to have to step up this year, man, and they need a pass rush. I don't know who the hell is going to step up this year and help out Grady Jarrett, but they need somebody else to be that 8 to 9 sack guy. I don't know if it's going to be David Onyemata, who they signed the free agency from New Orleans. I doubt it's going to be Calais Campbell. I was going back and forth with one Falcons fan who was like, man, we improved the pass rush, man. We signed Calais Campbell. Dog, Calais Campbell is 36 years old. If you're dependent on Calais Campbell to help you be that team that can consistently get after the QB, you're kind of lying to yourself, dog. He's 36 years old. You're asking too much out of Calais Campbell. Still a really solid player at his age, but if you think that Calais Campbell is going to be that guy in your defense to get you 8-9 sacks, man, you're kind of tripping. All right, you do have Lorenzo Carter, who, all right, maybe he could end up having a breakout season. Bud Dupree, if he can stay healthy, he can give you serviceable contributions at times. You got rookie Zach Harrison, who many Falcons fans are excited about, but I think he's more of a developmental project. I don't really know just how good he's going to be this season in his first year. I think it's probably going to take him 2 to 3 years to finally get things figured out, but they just need somebody to help out Grady Jarrett, and they need a pass rusher who can give you at least 8 to 9 sacks. And the reason why it's important for this pass rush to be consistent and for Grady Jarrett to not only be the only true threat when it comes to getting after the QB is because the Atlanta Falcons had the 31st worst third down defense in the NFL last season. A large reason for that is because of their lack of a consistent pass rush and a lack of pass rush threats outside of Grady Jarrett. If you want to be able to get off the field on third downs, which most of the times ends up being obvious passing situations, you got to be able to get after the QB. Then, when it comes to the secondary, you signed Jesse Bates, who is one of the better safeties in the league, and you have A.J. Terrell, who is a consensus top 10 cornerback. You need Jeff Okudah to step up for you. Now, Jeff Okudah, he wasn't bad last season for Detroit. He was just inconsistent. The first half of the season, he was really good. A lot of you people may not know this, but the first time the Detroit Lions played against the Minnesota Vikings, Jeff Okudah shut down Justin Jefferson. You may not believe it, but if you go back and watch that game, Jeff Okudah played the best game of his career the first time they played the Minnesota Vikings, I believe. He had a really good game against Justin Jefferson, and this guy was doing really good during the first half of the season. Now, after week 9, week 10, I don't know what the hell happened to Jeff Okudah. The guy just fell off a cliff. But this dude is pretty solid at times. And if Ryan Nielsen can get the most out of Jeff Okudah this year and can have him playing at a consistent level, this secondary should be really good. Richie Grant had a really good 2022 campaign, so your safety position is pretty solid. Your cornerback group can be pretty good as long as Jeff Okudah can be consistent. This guy isn't terrible, he's just inconsistent. So if you can get Jeff Okudah playing at a consistent level from week 1 to week 17, your secondary should be really good, and you should be able to slow down those quarterbacks such as Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, and Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins. Now, this is really big for the Atlanta Falcons, and this isn't something that they need to do to make it to the postseason, but this definitely would improve their chances, which is being able to produce more turnovers. Last season, the Falcons were 26th in takeaways. Now this year, if they don't really improve at all in that department, I don't think it's going to make or break them, but it definitely will improve their chances, because anytime you have a team that wants to run the football and that's their identity, you know that they're going to take a lot of time off the clock. They're going to keep the opposing defense off the field. They're going to gas them. They're going to get them tired, and they're going to keep the opposing offense off the field. And for the Atlanta Falcons, if this offense ends up being as good as what it should be, since they do have Bijan Robinson now, they did have one of the best run-blocking offensive lines in the league. This offense, if you give them extra possessions, they can make you pay because of their ability to chew a lot of time off the clock and to be a ball control offense. So if this defense can produce way more turnovers this year, this offense is going to benefit from that, and it's going to be a big disadvantage to the opponents that they play, because they're going to be able to stay on the field for a lot longer, and they're going to be able to take a lot of time off the clock. So this defense, if they can produce more turnovers this season, they're going to end up being pretty good. Now, for the most part, I think for the Atlanta Falcons, getting into the postseason, this is the most important. You need Arthur Smith to be able to outcoach the rest of the head coaches in this division outside of Frank Reich. I feel like Frank Reich right now is the best head coach in the NFC South. He's the most proven head coach in this division. He's the only head coach in this division that has been in the playoffs and has had some success to a certain extent. Todd Bowles, I don't think this guy is it. There are just certain head coaches who are just cut out to be coordinators. I think Todd Bowles is the prime example of that. You look at the New Orleans Saints with Dennis Allen, he's the biggest question mark on that team, in my opinion, and that whole entire coaching staff, because they didn't really look good at times last season. There were questionable decisions when it came to how they went about managing their quarterback situation between Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. His late game clock management wasn't really ideal in the most part. So for Arthur Smith, if he can outcoach Todd Bowles and Dennis Allen, and let's say they split between the Carolina Panthers or even New Orleans and they just sweep Tampa, that's going to increase their chances of being able to make it to the postseason. And really, I think this season is largely going to hinge on Arthur Smith, because the Falcons still have a lot of question marks when it comes to how good is Desmond Ridder going to be, how good is this defense going to perform. Is the hiring of their new defensive coordinator going to work out? Because if this guy, Ryan Nielsen, ends up being a whiff and Arthur Smith made the wrong hire, it's going to backfire in his face big time. Because the key to being a successful head coach in the NFL is making sure that you can hire the right guys on your staff. And for Arthur Smith, if his hiring of his new DC doesn't work out and his defense remains as bad as what it was last season, they're not going to make it to the postseason, and they're going to make it even easier for the Carolina Panthers to win this division. I think the Carolina Panthers are the most talented team in the NFC South going into this year. They're going to have a top 10 defense. They have one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. Frank Reich is really good with how he goes about getting efficient quarterback plays out of his QBs. And now that he has a young stud and Bryce Young got the helm at QB, as long as Bryce Young can stay upright and he can stay healthy, Carolina should be a lock for the postseason this year. So for Arthur Smith to be able to have success in the NFC South, he has to be able to outcoach some of the bottom tier coaches in this division, such as Dennis Allen and Todd Bowles. And if he can do that, I think the Atlanta Falcons should be able to make it into the postseason. This division is not that tough. There are many teams in this division that have a lot of question marks outside of the Carolina Panthers, Atlanta being one of them, and many of Atlanta's question marks all hinge on Arthur Smith and his job as the head coach for this organization. And even then, they're going to be playing against some really good teams. Minnesota is pretty well coached. They're going to have Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. You already know that the Detroit Lions have one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL. They have one of the best teams going into this season. If you want to be able to beat some of the best teams in the NFL, you're going to need more than talent to do so. You're going to need good coaching. Arthur Smith, if this guy ends up not being a good head coach, you're definitely going to see that reflected in some of these big games that they end up having to play this season against Jacksonville, Minnesota, Washington, and the New York Jets.